Oh, yeah. That is Tyreek Hill finding out live while he was playing Fortnite that Bradley Chubb had been traded to the Miami Dolphins, Jake Croucher. My name is Matthew Berry. Welcome into the Happy Hour. And I would say that I understand that excitement.
I was going to say, you had the same cackle coming out of the makeup room this morning.
Right.
Did something happen?
Yeah, of course, because Adam Schefter tweeted out a statement from the Commanders saying that Tanya and Dan Snyder have hired Bank of America Securities to explore a possible sale of the franchise. So I felt like Tyreek Hill getting Bradley Chubb. This is a top 5 day in Washington Commanders fan history, Washington football team history, Washington everything history. Here are my top 5. You ready for my top 5? Listen, I'm 52 years old. I've been a Washington fan since I was 5 years old and living in Charlottesville, Virginia as a young little boy. So it's ingrained in my blood, Jake Croucher. You know what I mean? It's like I feel about them the way you feel about Keanu Reeves. Like I'm all in. And so people know this. And let me tell you this. Here's my top 5, right? The three Super Bowls. And the rookie game of RG3. RG3's first game against the Saints, his rookie year, where you're just like, oh, we traded all this picks for this quarterback, and like we've got something here. Like some tremendous hope because we'd been in this quarterback desert for so long, and then RG3, you're like, whoa, that's awesome. So the excitement I felt after that game, and then today. Now, there's also maybe he's trying to just sell a minority share. We'll see if he's really going to sell. But you know what? Like this is a guy who said that he would never change the name from Redskins, and he did.
Yep.
And then now he's saying he would never sell the team, and now he's exploring possibilities. You don't hire Bank of America Securities to kick the tires.
No. And Adam Schefter doesn't tweet about it. If that
is correct. Adam is tied into that organization, and so.
Two things. One, I didn't realize.
Right, we're going to get into all the trade deadline stuff.
Yeah.
We're going to get into all the trade deadline winners or losers, and I think the biggest trade deadline winner might be Washington fans.
Yeah, might be
trading it. Right, might be trading in a new owner of this franchise.
Okay, well, one, your accent for some reason gets really southern when you really fire it up. I don't know why it does that, but it just did that then. And then two, I mean, it's not quite to this level, but like getting rid of Snyder, that's almost as good as like getting Patrick Mahomes or something, honestly.
It almost is. It almost is. It's such a toxic situation there. It's such a toxic situation, at the ownership level. I mean, they currently have 5 active investigations, the team does. There's 5 active investigations, including one from Congress.
Yes.
I mean, like...
I've never been investigated from Congress.
No, neither have I.
No, right,
no.
Something that's normal.
No, and like even like people at their worst, if you think about like usually it's not 5 active investigations.
Yes.
Usually it's maybe 1 or 2,
including
Congress.
Congress.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So.
Anyway, we'll talk about that more as it develops.
Today's a good day.
It's a good day.
Yeah.
And so was yesterday.
Yesterday was
a good day. Let's jump into some trade deadline reactions. Now, we already talked a little bit about TJ Hockenson going to the Vikings for that 2023 second-round pick and 2024 third-round picks. How does the Vikings offense change after the trade?
Well, listen, I think it helps, right? I mean, like we've already we like Kirk Cousins, right? Who so far this year is a top 10 fantasy quarterback on a points per game basis. Somebody I liked a lot in the preseason. They're throwing at a much higher rate than they did last year under Kevin O'Connell, and so TJ Hockenson's an upgrade over Irv Smith, over what they've had at the tight end position. Irv Smith's been banged up, obviously, a little bit this year as well, but Hockenson is one of the better tight ends in the NFL, certainly from a pass-catching perspective. I think jury's still out on his blocking, but what I would say here is that the Vikings offense wants to target the tight end. I mean, again, without somebody of Hockenson's caliber, they've still been top 10 in the NFL this year in terms of tight end targets per game and tight end red zone targets per game. So TJ Hockenson, who's already like a top 5 fantasy tight end on the season, he's actually tight end 4 in both points per game and overall so far this year, gets to Minnesota, and I think he'll see an increase in his value. Now, you've still got like Kelsey, you've still got Kittle, at the top. You've got Dallas Goedert up there as well.
Mark Andrews.
Yeah, sorry, what did I say? Oh, Kittle. I'm sorry. Yeah. You've got. I think he's in that tier with Kittle.
Yep.
You know what I mean? Like he's not Kelsey or Andrews, but he is in the very next tier, which he already was. But this is good. And if you've been using Kirk Cousins, I think this just elevates the entire Vikings offense. I'm not worried about Justin Jefferson. If there's one possible downtick in value here. Maybe Adam Thielen, who's a little bit more touchdown dependent among the pass catchers, Jay?
Yeah, I think so. And I think real life as well, it definitely helps the Vikings going forward, gives them an extra weapon, take a bit more pressure off Justin Jefferson. The Vikings, who are 6-1, it doesn't feel like they're a 6-1 team, but they are a 6-1 team.
Well, they're about ready to be a 6-2 team.
Yeah, well, right.
Because they're on the road.
Yeah.
And my Commanders.
Yeah, exactly.
My for sale Commanders.
Yes.
Any billionaires out there watching the show, hit a brother up.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like
sponsor the show and buy the Commanders.
Buy the Commanders.
Yeah.
And I would be in for 0.00000000001%.
There you go.
Yeah, I would like to join an ownership group.
Yeah, get
right.
involved. Why
Literally,
not?
like just
It's your
How
take.
much does $20 get me?
Yeah,
That's what I can afford.
Not a great deal.
No, not a great. But anyway, whatever.
Anyway, the Minnesota Vikings,
I'm
looking
very
up for them, plus 650 to win the NFC. I still don't think that they're the same caliber as the Eagles, for instance. As we look at the NFC odds provided by BetMGM, the Eagles, the clear favorite at plus 200. Then the Niners, plus 450, Cowboys, plus 550, and then those Vikings. And now Vikings fans might be offended because the Vikings have a better record.
I would rather bet the Cowboys at plus 550, honestly. Like,
Yeah.
But I like that bet much better than the 49ers at plus 450.
I agree with you there, and I think the Cowboys, like the way to think about this, Cowboys v Vikings, well, Cowboys last week, they were 10-point favorites, home to the Bears. A few weeks before that, the Vikings were only 7.5-point favorites, home to the Bears. So the betting market thinks that the Cowboys are better than the Vikings, but certainly, I mean, the Vikings are going to get the 2 seed because they've got this edge.
At the moment, I mean, it's gone really well for the Vikings. I know this is going to sound insane, but I'm going to tell you. Listen, there's a chance.
Don't tell me the Commanders NFC.
No. Like the Commanders might sneak into the playoffs. They're on a 3-game win streak. I'm telling you, I think they legitimately have a shot against the Vikings this week.
Yeah. No,
right? The Snyder news, along with Chase Young. They've activated his window to be returned. We'll see if he actually plays this Sunday or not. But the fact that Chase Young's just going to be out there and practicing, I think those two things. And Kirk Cousins coming back to his old haunts. You know what I mean?
Like revenge game. Vikings are 3.5-point road favorites against the Commanders. Let's quickly talk about the Lions though and what their offense. With Hockenson going to Minnesota. What's their passing outlook looking post-Hockenson?
Yeah, so first off, let's talk about what Hockenson doing. 17%. He had a 17% target share. TJ Hockenson did. He had the second most targets on the Lions. He was averaging over 6 a game here. And so now Amon-Ra St. Brown, who already was doing very well so far this year, right? He's, a top 12 fantasy wide receiver on a points per game basis so far this season. Think about last year, weeks 14 through 18, when TJ Hockenson was out. Amon-Ra St. Brown was the second best wide receiver in fantasy when Hockenson was out in his career. When Amon-Ra St. Brown has seen 8 or more targets, he's averaging 21.8 fantasy points per game. Again, over 6 targets a game are available now that Hockenson is out. And if you're Jared Goff, where are you going to go? You're going to go to the sun god here. Maybe you see a little bit more Josh Reynolds, who has 3 different games this year with 6 receptions and 80 yards so far this season. For me, it'd be interesting, right? I think you'll see probably at the tight end position, it'd be a mixture between Brock Wright and James Mitchell. I will tell you that last week, week 8, the Lions used 2 tight end sets 20 times, which was a season high for them. They're actually top 10 in the NFL in 12 personnel calls over the last couple of weeks here. So they're going to more 2 tight end sets. So you could see Wright and James Mitchell out there as well. I will tell you that they really like James Mitchell. They think they found something there in Detroit. So I don't know that I'm rushing to pick up either guy except for in the deepest of leagues. But if you're in a tight end premium league, you're in a dynasty league, James Mitchell is sort of interesting here. I picked up Mitchell in a dynasty league this morning.
Yep. All right, let's jump to Chase Claypool, another big trade, traded to the Bears for a second-round pick. What do you think Claypool's value is going to be like in Chicago vis-a-vis Pittsburgh, where he was the 47th ranked wide receiver on a points-per-game basis?
I think it goes up here. It's a much more narrow target tree, here. So first off, he goes from Pittsburgh, and everyone's like, oh, Chicago can't throw the ball. Their offense is awful. Well, what do you think Pittsburgh was? You know what I mean? So I actually think it's at worst negligible, but I would actually argue it's an upgrade in terms of his quarterback play, because over the last 4 weeks or so, Justin Fields has looked like an NFL quarterback. Yep. Jay, and so my expectation here is, and there's less targets, there's less target competition. As you see here, for Justin Fields. Now, a lot of these fantasy points in terms of, he's been a top 12 fantasy quarterback over the last 4 weeks. A lot of that is, because of his rushing, but just through the eye test. He looks like an NFL quarterback these days.
Looks like a totally different guy from the first 2 weeks.
Yeah. And so they're like, hey, we're going to get you some help. Because right now, after Darnell Mooney, it's like Equanimeous St. Brown and Dante Pettis and, Velus Jones. I mean, it's like this. And so I think Claypool is basically the number 2 guy there, right? And he's gonna play like kind of a big slot, a big tight end role there as well. So I think this is an upgrade for him. I would say he's more of a low end wide receiver 3, high end wide receiver 4 than the low end wide receiver 4, high end wide receiver 5 he was in Pittsburgh.
I think what it does, it creates variance. Like, he had no path to be a top 30 wide receiver on Pittsburgh. Now in Chicago, he might, just because it's different, and also, like you said, narrower target tree. Does this help or hurt Darnell Mooney?
I think it's fine. I mean, again, Darnell Mooney's getting a 28% target share so far this year. I don't know that. To me, I think that where it takes away from the Dante Pettises and the St. Browns of the world on the Bears. Like, they just don't have, they've been sort of mixing it up, right? And so I think now it's very much a very clear target tree. We saw Darnell Mooney be fantasy successful with Allen Robinson in the fold there. So I'm not really worried about Mooney here. I think he'll continue to be a borderline, top 35 wide receiver.
Yep.
Like, he's in that range. He's in that 30 to 35 range with, let's see, whatever. Last week he's wide receiver 35. I'm at 31 this week.
Yep. And Justin Fields looks like he was going to be a top 10 option going forward.
Yeah.
Let's jump to the Steelers.
And this helps Justin Fields, who I think is locked in as a top 12 fantasy quarterback the rest of the way. It's just another weapon for him. And by the way, quickly, just on the other side of the ball, Pittsburgh, right? I mean, I don't know where are you thinking, but to me, I'm it's just one less target competition. So Deontay Johnson, George Pickens, full steam ahead.
Yeah, I think Pickens is the one who benefits the most. Deontay Johnson does as well. It's tough when they had 3 name receivers in addition to Pat Freiermuth with a bad quarterback right now in Kenny Pickett, a struggling offensive line. Now there's just more upside, particularly for Pickens. I think he's available in a lot of leagues right now, and he shouldn't be going forward. All right, let's talk about.
And by the way, Steelers are on a bye this week, so they've got a week to sort of figure everything out. And I'm not worried. Steven Sims will catch. He'll play the slot for them, but it's going to be Johnson, Pickens, and Freiermuth. That's going to be the passing attack for Pittsburgh coming out of the bye.
Yep. Okay, let's talk about what the Miami Dolphins did yesterday, and we've got an interview with the great Raheem the Dream Mostert coming up at the end of the show. So stay tuned for that.
Raheem must start.
Raheem offered his thoughts on that little debate, so we'll see where that ends up. Anyway, not as fantasy relevant, but Bradley Chubb gets traded to the Dolphins. That's going to help their pass rush significantly. Chase Edmonds goes the other way to the Broncos. But then the big one, or bigger one potentially, Jeff Wilson goes to the Dolphins for a 2023 5th-round pick. Is Jeff Wilson flex viable in Miami?
Not yet, not until we see how it plays out. I mean, Miami's rolling, right? They're doing well. They're playing well, and they're winning games. And since week 5, Raheem Mostert has had 63% of the running back carries for the Miami Dolphins. The last time Chase Edmonds had double-digit touches in a game was week 1. And so since week 5, Mostert averaging over 80 rushing yards per game. I just don't see Jeff Wilson Jr. coming in and taking, to me, this is more about depth. And a guy that I think that Mike McDaniel sort of figured out, you know what, I'm figuring out how I want this offense and want this team to look, and Wilson Jr. is closer to what I have in Mostert, if Mostert were to go down, than Chase Edmonds. And so it just made sense, getting rid of Edmonds, who, is part of the Chubb deal. I think he was a minor part of that deal, actually. But so Wilson to me becomes more Mostert insurance than a standalone viable flex. We'll see how it plays out. Obviously, there's familiarity with Mike McDaniel from their time together in San Francisco. But, it's worth noting that in 2020, there was a couple weeks 12 through 15 in 2020 with the 49ers, and that where both guys were healthy, playing for Mike McDaniel, who was the coordinator at the time. And in those games, Mostert averaged 13 rush attempts a game. Wilson averaged 11.5. I don't know. I think Mostert's running so well but he does have an injury history. Wilson to me feels like definitely if you have Mostert, I'm adding him as insurance, but I don't know that I'm starting him until I see what his role looks like on this team. And my feeling is it's more depth than standalone value.
Yeah, we are a Raheem Mostert show now.
That's right.
Raheem was great. Looking forward to that interview coming up at the end of the show. But he does have an injury history. Jeff Wilson in this Miami offense, which is explosive, one of the best offenses in the league.
Oh, sure.
So I think that the running back there is going to have huge value, and Jeff Wilson should be rostered in every league.
That I would agree with, yeah.
Okay, let's talk about the running back exiting Miami, Chase Edmonds, who goes to Denver. The Broncos, they have a bye. You're holding Latavius Murray through that bye with Edmonds now, with Gordon, with Murray, a bit of a messy situation.
Yeah, I mean, I guess so. It sort of depends on how, like, if he's on my waiver wire in the league, I'm not rushing out to grab him. But if I were to have rostered him and there's no one out there that I really want to go grab, I don't mind holding on to him. Look, he's had at least 15 touches or a touchdown in every game that he's played with the Denver Broncos. I feel like he's looked like the best running back. That's damning with faint praise, but I feel like he's looked like the best running back compared to Melvin Gordon or Mike Boone. Boone is on the IR, so Chase Edmonds basically will take that role. This feels like a three-headed committee on a low-scoring offense.
Yeah.
So, I don't know that I'm super excited about any of them. I mean, Chase Edmonds was averaging under 5 touches a game over his last 4 games. Under 5 touches a game, like 4.1 touches per game.
I think the concern would be as well that they paid him and they thought he was going to be the guy, and then he just didn't play well, and now he's potentially the third string back in a pretty meek offense. But let's go to San Francisco, which is...
I don't mind dropping Chase Edmonds in a redraft league, especially if you need it. And then I think it's probably still, Gordon, Murray, Edmonds in that order, but Murray's probably got more touchdown equity. Gordon probably has a little bit more passing down equity. They'll use Edmonds.
Gordon is still technically the starter, though that didn't matter that much in London. But,
no, it didn't. But ideally, you're avoiding this situation unless you're truly desperate. It's not a good offense.
No, I think that Cortland Sutton and Jerry Jeudy, Jeudy is trending in the right direction, so maybe you're starting both of them in your flex, and then Greg Dulcich.
Yeah, Dulcich is the guy that you feel best about, honestly, because Sutton and Jeudy have been going in opposite directions. Yeah. Sutton started hot and Jeudy was cold, and then recently it's been Jeudy and not Sutton. But they just, maybe coming out of the bye they'll be better, and Russ can get more in a rhythm here. But the offense just seems out of sync.
Yeah, seems
the
totally
entire time.
Broken. An offense that is trending in the right direction is in San Francisco, and so with Jeff Wilson gone, Elijah Mitchell, who was something of an afterthought, but was drafted relatively high. Is he someone who's now needs to be rostered, mainly as a backup for Christian McCaffrey?
I mean, that's the only thing, right? Just because, given CMC's injury history and the fact that Elijah Mitchell, when out there, has been productive, yes, I think it's worth rostering him. Needs to be. Am I using a number 1 waiver pick or a lot of fab money? No. But if he was dropped because he was injured and then they traded for Christian McCaffrey, I don't mind going ahead and grabbing him and sticking him on your roster as well. As you see the Niners depth chart right there, Tyrion Davis-Price and Jordan Mason also on the list with Elijah Mitchell backing up Christian McCaffrey. But yes, the only way Elijah Mitchell has any fantasy value this year is if CMC gets hurt. Yeah, and we certainly hope that doesn't happen.
I think CMC now projects as the number 1 fantasy player going forward. I think pretty clearly, right?
If you were drafting today for the rest of the season, you're drafting CMC number 1, no question.
Okay, let's go to Nyheim Hines, who we like to talk about on this show.
Yes.
Yeah, one of our favorites with Marlon Mack, one of his former teammates. So he gets traded to the Bills for Zach Moss and a conditional 6th rounder. Any chance that Nyheim Hines is fantasy relevant in that explosive Bills offense?
It feels like no. I mean, if there's a positive here, it's that the Bills do throw to their running backs a lot. They're actually 8th in the NFL in running back targets per game. But, I don't know, Singletary's a nice pass catcher.
Yeah.
And they drafted James Cook, and it's weird, Brandon Beane, their general manager, saying, this doesn't affect James Cook at all.
I feel like it kind of does.
I do too. And he said, I saw a quote from him on Twitter saying, we could see both guys in the backfield. I don't know, man. Feels like, as it is, Singletary's been a little bit up and down so far this year. He's running back 26 on a points per game basis so far this season. He's playing over 80% of the offensive snaps, so how much is there really for Nyheim Hines? Feels like, again, more nice depth and a good NFL move for the Buffalo Bills. They clearly want in terms of how they see their offense, they get rid of Zach Moss. So now they've got Singletary, they've got James Cook, they've got Nyheim Hines, and they're all slightly different players, but they all are adept at catching the ball out of the backfield. This is going to be a pass-heavy offense, and so Nyheim Hines feels like depth for, Devin Singletary and not. And by the way, I think you can go ahead and drop James Cook in redraft leagues. I'm still hanging on to him in Dynasty. I love James Cook in Dynasty, but feels like it's Singletary and the Nyheim Hines. And he's kind of going to have the role he had in Indy, which is he was a backup to Jonathan Taylor, and then, he'd get 5 to 8 touches a game.
Yeah, even if Devin Singletary were to go down, I don't think Nyheim Hines vaults into necessarily must start every single week territory either, so you don't even get that upside.
No.
Every season, Josh Allen's passing yards in the second half of the year go down because it gets colder in Buffalo, tougher passing environments, but still at the same time, I don't think that means they're running Nyheim Hines 13 times a game.
No, I think you can. I mean, he's running back 48 on a points per game basis. He's barely a top 50 play so far this year, and going from the Colts to the Bills, gets better in offense.
Yep.
So his fantasy stock improves a little bit, but from what to running back 48 to running back 39?
Yeah.
I mean, it's not. I will say very quickly on the other side, I'm kind of interested in Deion Jackson now.
Yeah, particularly with Jonathan Taylor's ankle needing to come out of the game on Sunday, come back in. He doesn't look anything like the guy he was last year. It feels like that is potentially a re-injury waiting to happen, in which case Deion Jackson, if he was the starter, he's an low-end RB2 on the Colts, I think.
Yeah. By the way, I mean, speaking of this, Fantasy Life app literally just sent me an alert. Quote, this is a tweet from Mike Chappell, who covers the team. Jonathan Taylor won't practice today, not 100%. Now, it's a Wednesday, but still, we've heard this before. We've seen this movie before, Jay Croucher.
Yes.
Yeah, this is one you can actually ruin the ending for, and we'd be okay with it. There's a chance Jonathan Taylor doesn't play, or at least his workload is lesser. Deion Jackson, you think about that, those weeks 5 for 6, 39 total touches, 212 yards. He had a touchdown. He caught all 14 of his targets as well. I think people were surprised at how adept he was at catching the ball. He's now Jonathan Taylor's backup and somebody that'll get snaps in a game. Deion Jackson could play.
He can definitely play. And also, Sam Ehlinger, he's not going to throw the ball 45 times in any game. They're playing the Pats this week, who have a really bad rushing defense. I think Deion Jackson would be a locked-in RB2 if Jonathan Taylor is out, particularly with Hines gone as well. Okay, let's jump to Calvin Ridley, who's not fantasy relevant for this year, but I think long-term outlook. Right. Want to talk Dynasty leagues as well.
Yeah.
He gets traded to the Jags.
Promo code Calvin, yep.
Yeah, promo code Calvin, yeah. He gets traded to the Jags. And look, he was suspended in part because he bet on the Falcons to cover against the Jags last season, which is somewhat ironic. At least he was betting on his team, which is the main thing to remember with that.
Exactly. He's like a young Jay Croucher out there betting on the Falcons.
Yes, exactly.
Only to be disappointed by the outcome.
Yeah, except I wasn't drafted first round by the Falcons.
No, exactly. No, he's much richer than you.
Yeah. That's correct. But there's a little bit of emotion swirling around post Calvin Ridley trade and before it as well, and mainly from Cordarrelle Patterson, who was wearing just on Sunday against the Panthers, as we can see here. Now, I'm going to infer that is a free Calvin Ridley t-shirt. And then, this is on the sideline, Cordarrelle Patterson, who has just been designated to return to practice off injured reserve. But so he's clearly all in Calvin Ridley, and then gets traded just 2 days later, and sad faces tweeted out by Cordarrelle Patterson.
Sad faces. So Calvin was beloved in Atlanta by his teammates. He'll be beloved by his teammates in Jacksonville next year. I think this is a dynasty perspective. He turns 28 in December, which isn't great. But the last time we saw him, his last full season, 2020, he was the 4th best wide receiver on a points per game basis. And, here's somebody who averaged over 14 fantasy points per game in the 5 games he played last year. And so for me, Jay, I think this is ultimately a good move for Calvin Ridley. Gets him out of Atlanta, new situation, on a team that's going to, throw the ball. What a novel concept. But, he was never getting the ball in Atlanta because they don't actually throw the ball. And they have Kyle Pitts and they have Drake London, and they can't get the ball to those 2 guys. So what's Calvin Ridley going to do?
Yeah.
So I think this is ultimately a good move, and the Falcons are able to move on from a talented player, but, that where things have just sort of gone south. And the Jaguars add another piece for Trevor Lawrence. So if you have Trevor Lawrence in Dynasty, and I do, you're excited about next year.
Yeah, I think Calvin Ridley the escape from Arthur Smith. That's like Tim Robbins crawling through the sewer to get out of the jail in Shawshank. Now Calvin Ridley can live in a passing offense.
Right.
Also this will be another proof point is Trevor Lawrence actually any good.
Thanks, by the way, for people who haven't seen Shawshank Redemption.
And Shawshank Redemption.
Oh, so he escaped. So now you know that
28 years ago, Shawshank is fair game. Shawshank is fair game.
I disagree. You just ruined that movie. It's a classic. People love Shawshank Redemption. Until now, you just ruined a great movie. When we come back, Jay Croucher will still be here, scrolling through IMDb to figure out what else he can.
And we'll be joined by Lawrence Jackson.
Yes, at Lord Don't Lose will come to help us settle this nonsense. I want to start a GoFundMe to buy the Commanders. Hey, it's Matthew Berry from NBC Sports and RotoWorld.com. Just want to thank you so much for watching what you just watched, or at least being too lazy to click out of it after the autoplay just kept it going. So either way, thank you so much for just letting it scroll by your screen. And now I'd like to ask you respectfully, please subscribe to the NFL on NBC YouTube channel for the latest NFL news, fantasy headlines from RotoWorld, and betting analysis from NBC Sports Edge.